Hi friends, I hope you're doing well as we step into this brand new year. You know, there's something beautiful about fresh starts, new calendars, and unmarked pages waiting to be filled. But if I'm honest, there's also something terrifying about them. Because for many of us, we're not just turning the page on a calendar. We're carrying unfulfilled promises from last year, unanswered prayers from months ago, and dreams that still haven't manifested. And as everyone around us is posting about their new beginnings and fresh starts, we're sitting here wondering, God, where are you? Am I running out of time? Maybe you started last year believing this would be the year everything changed. The year you'd finally get that job, meet that person, start that business, or see that breakthrough. But here you are, 12 months later, and it feels like nothing has moved. The same struggles, the same waiting, the same silence. And now, as everyone celebrates new beginnings, you're wrestling with a painful question. Has God forgotten about me? Is it too late? But what if I told you that God's silence isn't His absence? What if His delay isn't His denial? What if right now, in this very moment that feels like you're falling behind, God is actually positioning you ahead? Psalm 31 verse 15 says, "My times are in thy hand." Not in your hand, not in your boss's hand, not in anyone else's hand. Your times, your seasons, your moments, they're all in God's hand. And friend, God is never late. Let me ask you something real. How many of you set goals last January that you're now embarrassed to even think about? You were going to lose the weight, save the money, change careers, work on that relationship. You made the vision board, wrote the declarations, posted the inspirational quotes, but somewhere between January and December, life happened. Obstacles came, doors closed, people left, and now you're wondering if you wasted an entire year. I want you to hear this. You didn't waste anything. Because while you were looking at what didn't happen, God was preparing you for what couldn't happen until you were ready. Ecclesiastes 3 verse 11 tells us, "He hath made everything beautiful in His time," not in your time, not according to your timeline or your 5-year plan, in His time. And His timing is always, always perfect. Think about the pressure we put on ourselves at the beginning of each year. Social media explodes with transformation posts, success stories, and highlight reels of people who seem to have it all figured out. Your college roommate just bought a house. Your cousin just got promoted. Your friend from church just got engaged. And you're sitting there eating leftover pizza, wondering what's wrong with you. But here's what nobody tells you in those perfectly filtered posts. Everyone you're comparing yourself to has a behind-the-scenes story you don't see. They have struggles you don't know about, battles they're fighting, and their own set of waiting rooms they're sitting in. 2 Corinthians 10 verse 12 warns us, "For we dare not make ourselves of the number, or compare ourselves with some that commend themselves, but they measuring themselves by themselves, and comparing themselves among themselves, are not wise." Comparison is the thief of joy, and it's also the thief of perspective. Because when you're busy looking at someone else's harvest, you miss the fact that God is still plowing your ground, preparing your soil, getting you ready for a harvest you couldn't handle last year. Let me tell you about Sarah, not the biblical Sarah, though her story applies too. This Sarah is a woman I know who spent 3 years applying for her dream position. 3 years of interviews, rejections, almost but not quite moments, and watching less qualified people get the opportunities she wanted. By the time the new year rolled around again, she was exhausted. She told me, "I'm done hoping. Clearly this isn't meant for me." But 2 months into the year, she got a call. Not for the position she'd been chasing, but for something better. Something that didn't even exist when she first started applying. The director told her, We created this role specifically with someone like you in mind. And in that moment, she realized something profound. God wasn't late. He was creating something that didn't exist yet. He was preparing a space that required her specific gifts, her specific experiences, and yes, even her specific disappointments. Proverbs 19 verse 21 says, "There are many devices in a man's heart, nevertheless the counsel of the Lord that shall stand." You can plan all you want, and you should, but God's plan will always trump yours, and His plan is always better. Here's what happens in the waiting that we often miss: preparation. When you're sitting in what feels like delay, God is developing you. When you're frustrated by closed doors, God is protecting you. When you're confused by silence, God is positioning you. Think about Joseph. He had dreams at 17, but he didn't step into them until he was 30. 13 years of waiting, 13 years of slavery, false accusations, forgotten promises, and prison cells. Can you imagine Joseph on New Year's Day in that Egyptian prison, watching another year pass, wondering if God had abandoned him? But Genesis 50 verse 20 reveals the truth. "But as for you, ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass, as it is this day, to save much people alive." Every year Joseph spent waiting was a year he spent preparing, learning Egyptian culture, understanding administration, developing resilience, building character, and becoming the man who could handle being second in command of an empire. The boy who had the dream at 17 couldn't have handled the responsibility. The man who emerged at 30 could. God wasn't late. He was right on time. Let's talk about what you're carrying into this new year. Maybe it's disappointment from unanswered prayers. You prayed for healing, and you're still sick. You prayed for provision, and you're still struggling. You prayed for reconciliation, and the relationship is still broken. You prayed for direction, and you still feel lost. And now you're wondering, does prayer even work? Is God even listening? Here's what I need you to understand. Delayed doesn't mean denied. When God says not yet, it's not because He doesn't care. It's because He sees something you don't. Isaiah 55 verses 8 and 9 say, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." You're looking at the calendar. God is looking at eternity. You're counting days. God is building destiny. You're focused on the timeline. God is focused on the transformation. Consider David. When Samuel anointed him as the future king of Israel, David was just a teenager watching sheep, but he didn't take the throne until he was 30 years old. Years passed. He killed Goliath and became a national hero, but still no throne. He served faithfully in Saul's army, but still no throne. He ran for his life, lived in caves, was hunted like an animal, but still no throne. Every year that passed, David could have said, "God, you're late. The prophet anointed me. Where's my crown?" But those wilderness years weren't wasted years. They were preparation years. In the caves, David learned dependence on God. In the running, he learned to trust God's protection. In the waiting, he learned to worship in the darkness. And when he finally took the throne, he wasn't just a king. He was a king after God's own heart. 1 Samuel 16 verse 7 tells us, "For the Lord seeth not as man seeth, for man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart." God was preparing David's heart, not just his position, because a position without preparation is a setup for failure. As we navigate this new year, I want you to shift your perspective on waiting. Stop seeing it as wasted time and start seeing it as investment time. Every closed door is God's protection. Every no is making room for a better yes. Every delay is development. Every season of silence is preparation for a season of sound. You're not falling behind. You're being set up. You're not missing out. You're being prepared. You're not forgotten. You're being formed. Jeremiah 29 verse 11 promises, "For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end." God has an expected end for you, a destination, a purpose, a plan. And He's not late in bringing it to pass. He's right on schedule. Think about a farmer. When he plants seeds, he doesn't panic when nothing appears the next day. He doesn't dig up the ground a week later to check if anything's happening. He doesn't give up after a month of seeing nothing. Why? Because he understands the process. He knows that underneath the surface, in the darkness of the soil, something is happening. Roots are forming. Foundations are being established. Strength is being built. And when the time is right, not when he decides it's right, but when the season is right, what was hidden will break through the surface. Galatians 6 verse 9 encourages us, "And let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap, if we faint not." In due season, not in your season, not according to your timeline, but in the season God has ordained. And if you don't give up, you will see the harvest. Here's my challenge for you as we walk through this year. Stop rushing God and start trusting God. Stop trying to force doors open and start asking God to prepare you for the doors He's about to open. Stop comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20 and start focusing on what God is writing in your story right now. Because I promise you, the delays you're frustrated by today will become the testimonies you're grateful for tomorrow. The waiting room you're sitting in right now is developing patience, building character, strengthening faith, and preparing you for the weight of what you've been asking for. Romans 5 verses 3 and 4 tell us, "And not only so, but we glory in tribulations also, knowing that tribulation worketh patience, and patience, experience, and experience, hope." Your current struggle is working something in you that you're going to need for your next level. God is not late. He hasn't forgotten you. He's not ignoring you. He's preparing you. And when the time is right, not a moment too soon, and not a moment too late, everything He promised will come to pass. This is your year, not because the calendar changed, but because you're finally understanding that God's timing is perfect. Trust the process. Trust the preparation. Trust the One who holds your times in His hands. He's making everything beautiful in His time, and that includes you. If this message encouraged you today, please like, share, and subscribe so others can be reminded that God's delays are not His denials. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. I pray that this year you'll experience the breakthrough that comes from trusting God's perfect timing. May you walk in peace, knowing that He who began a good work in you will complete it. See you next time, and remember, God is not late. He is preparing you.